Taking Life as It Is, a fanfiction by Nerdy Nobody. Iterator looks to the moon would be lying if she tried to say that she wasn't happy when the little slug cat, who she had started referring to as Sugar, stuck around instead of making the journey deep to the void sea. Considering her state, and the state of the world at large, there was nothing really to do, or anyone to talk to. She spent her days staring up at the few neurons she had, just gazing into the swirling waters around her, and losing more and more time with each passing cycle. It was quiet. It was lonely. Oh, so very lonely. Maybe that's why the little creature kept coming back, kept staying with her. Maybe it was lonely too. Maybe it saw its own loneliness in her eyes, and decided to keep her company as the cycles passed and her body only further deteriorated. The rain cycles have not been kind to her recently, and her umbilical began to come loose, spilling wires that hung limply across her back. She wasn't so sure what exactly would happen upon those wires being severed, but despite everything, she wasn't exactly eager to find out. But none of that. For now, she was, well, not fine. She hadn't been fine in many cycles, but she was surviving. Not in the least due to the almost exorbitant amount of neurons that Sugar had stolen for her from 5 Pebbles. Despite all odds, she was still here. Chuckling softly, she couldn't help but muse that their creators had built them to last. Sugar swiveled its head at the iterator, tilting its head and giving her an inquisitive look as it paused in its gnawing on the small bat fly. She waved it off simply.
Don't mind me, little one. Lost in thought is all.
She assured her friend. Sugar blinked and raised a brow, going back to its albeit meager meal, but keeping a seemingly disbelieving eye on her.
It's nothing, really, just...
She sighed. It wasn't like she could do much more than talk. Now, and she did appreciate having an ear to listen.
I was thinking about why you stayed, I suppose. Why I stayed. I'm glad you did, of course, but I just can't help but wonder why you could have gone to the sea and escaped the cycle, and then decided to stay with me. And then myself, stuck in here until my can degrades so far I can no longer retain consciousness.
She chuckled humorously. Immediately, Sugar bristled and let out a displeased hiss. It shoved the rest of the bat fly into his mouth before scrambling up to dart over, making her yelp as she was nearly bowled over by her leaping into her lap and smacking its hands into her shoulders. If she wasn't made of metal, she was almost sure the little slughead would have bitten her. And even then, it looked like her friend was considering it. She had to scramble her hands to keep herself upright, jostling her hanging umbilical uncomfortably.
Sugar!
She reprimanded.
What was that for?
Sugar shook her and hissed again, looking frustrated. Once again, the barrier of language was going to be a problem. Sugar could understand her just fine, but it could only make the sounds an animal could. She grabbed the creature and lifted it away. Well, as best as she could anyway, and glared.
I'm not a rattle, Sugar, so please do not shake me. My condition is poor as is,
she said firmly. In response, Sugar's eyes rolled so far up that it flopped backwards into her lap with a huff. She sighed and smoothed a hand over its soft stomach into silence for a moment. The little creature could almost pass for a plush, she mused. If it wasn't for the short, stiff fur that always seemed a little wet, and not just because of the short swim it took to get to her little island. And the sticky paw pads, it was soft, squishy, and smooth, not to mention quite warm. In a different world, maybe they could have been bred as pets. This one, at least, was a very good companion in her humble opinion. She appreciated its company, and it seemed to just appreciate hers as well. She paused.
Oh, do you not like me joking about destroying myself?
She asked slowly. Sugar's ears perked up instantly and it nodded furiously, pushing itself up as it pressed itself to her front and stared up at her with those sorrowful eyes and low purr rumbling in its throat. If she had a heart, it would probably hurt at that. An apology, she scratched behind the little creature's ears.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you at all, little one.
She sighed, leaning back.
Sometimes I think about what if I had been one of my creators instead of the creation?
She began.
Would I have hated the cycle as much as they did? Would I have a family? Would I have gone with them into Ascension? Or would I have stayed?
She wondered.
Thanks to your gifts, I've remembered some of the details I hadn't before. I think I used to watch the clouds through my overseers. The sun, the moon. Sometimes I can't help but envy them. being able to live out there, whereas I am here. Instead of, I used to feel many things through my can, but I can imagine it's not quite the same.
She looked down at Sugar, running a thumb across its little head.
Do you like the sun, little creature?
She asked. It paused but nodded happily all the same. She chuckled.
Certainly better than the rain, at least.
Almost as one, the two suddenly froze, ears and antenna drawing back. The rain. They'd forgotten about the rain. All too little and too late they had noticed. Only now could Moon hear the sounds of the rushing water somewhere beyond the confines of her chambers. The deep, terrible rumble of water hitting her can, draining inside of it. She and Sugar locked eyes. All she could see is pupils shrunken into slits. The way its breathing had sped up already, as if to make up for the air that it would soon be losing. Panic calculations began shooting through her head. There was a shelter close to her chambers, so tantalizingly close. In just the next room over, the rain could have begun too long ago, or they would have noticed. After a point, it became impossible not to. The water around her chamber became tuntalous, already starting to rise up, but it was not too late. She had to believe it wasn't too late. Immortal cycle or not, she desperately did not want to watch her friend die. Again, she locked eyes with Sugar. "Go!" she ordered. Even without the mark of communication, the slugcat would have needed no instructions. In an instant, it was diving into the waters, becoming naught but a dark blur as it swam quickly out of her chambers. She hoped that it would make it. For her, this was a normal part of the cycle. The waters coming in and filling her collapsed can, flooding her chambers and losing her in the cold and dark until it would eventually mostly drain out and leave her soaked, battered, but alive. As resilient as she can be for another round of survival in this harsh world. The anxiety never really went away, though. Now, she didn't like being drowned. Of course she didn't. That was simply how it was. A series of bad things compounding until it eventually became normal. Though sometimes now she would look at the water around her chambers and have a shudder of dread to run through her. She didn't like to have to think about it, luckily or unluckily now. Her worried mind was too focused on her friend. With a sudden splash, said friend's head so they popped out of the water once more, scrambling on what little dry shore there was now. If Moo had a stomach, it would have dropped to her feet by now.
Sugar! You can't stay here! You're going to drown!
She flung her hands in the air as she stated the obvious, but Sugar shook its head, desperately, furiously phantoming, or at least trying to. It was now that she remembering the vents and the pipes that ran through her can, now set at a precarious angle and filled with rushing water. One getting into the pipes had a high chance of being pushed right back out of them just as quickly. Even her brave little friend would be able to handle getting essentially pressure washed in out of the pipes. The water was lapping violently at their feet now. Sugar was clinging to her legs, and none of it was helping. If her mind was at full capacity, if only her umbilical worked, then maybe she could get Sugar to the topmost entrance of her chamber, but no, that was leaking water too. They were trapped, and she could do nothing about it. Even after everything that had happened to her, through her brother diving into self-destruction and using up all the water and her can collapsing, she had never felt so completely and utterly helpless. Things died all the time, coming back just as quickly, but this was a friend, and a friend who was in clear distress as just the water rose further. A thrashing wave hit the two, and Sugar made an odd noise between a growl and a yowl, jumping in both surprise and panic, diving it to succumb up upon her shoulders, and nearly sending her tumbling down into the waters below with a yelp.
Sugar! Don't!
She choked off as the panicked flailings caused the back leg to scrape at an exposed wire with fully extended claws. The sensation of being shocked running through her puppet body as she seized and finally did tumble over, falling into a whirl of winds. Her scream was cut off in the water. It was dark and cold, and she didn't have the strength to get up. Claws dug into her shoulders and the already tattered dress her little friend had given to her a few cycles ago, clinging desperately and kicking its back legs into the water. But considering she was made of metal and connected to an even heavier medical umbilical, lifting her from the water was an impossible task. The water was swirling and battering at them now, but she noted that her friend did not let go even as the water rose. It was touching and terrifying all at once. Even in the situation where her little friend was trying to save her, it had already done so much. She wished it would stop and swim away, even if it was futile. Moon didn't need to breathe, but she could feel it when the water reached her neurons. A sudden burst of disorientation, all senses washed away with the flood. It felt like shutting down again. In some ways, no. Up, no. Down. She couldn't think or remember, or hardly even feel the weak paws still clinging to her shoulders, despite the fact that it had been there for days, minutes, seconds. She doesn't know. She does, however, feel when a rush of water flings them sideways and against the wall. Something jagged catches on the wires, exposed her back. Snap.